Okay, here we go. This is Cecile Rosenzweig, and today is Tuesday, June 16th, 2015, and we're interviewing in her home. Okay, Cecile, tell me a little bit about your family and your parents. Where were they born, or if you know anything about your grandparents also?
My mother was born in Chicago, and when she was a young lady, the family moved to Texas. My father was born in Sabalin, Poland/Russia. The borders changed. He came to America when he was 17 years old through the port of Galveston, and he had an uncle, Uncle Joe Sheps, was his mother's brother, and he gradually brought over his sister's family and all the children, and also his other sister. He had two sisters here, and brought them over with all their children. And so he was the patriarch that got him over to America. And Daddy came in 1912. Uncle Jake, his older brother, came in 1911. They were both bakers, and they came and worked at Chef's Bakery. The rest of the family followed soon. Uncle Julius, who was Joe and Annette's father, had been taken by the Russians, and he was in Siberia, and that's why he didn't come at that time. He was on a freight train with the Russians shipping them somewhere, and the guards fell asleep and he escaped and came to America with his parents and the younger children. Wow.
And they all settled in the Dallas area?
Yes, because the Shepses were here, and that was my grandmother's maiden name was Sheps, and her brother brought them all over here, and they came to the port of Galveston. Wow. And left from Bremen, which still goes on as the port of embarkation, I think. And came to Dallas, and there were several bakers in the family. Uncle Jake and Daddy and Uncle Hyman Goldman were the three bakers, and they went to work in the Chef's Bakery.
What was your mom doing at this time?
My mom and Dad met where all the young people used to go near Wichita Falls. And Uncle Abe was already married to Aunt Ann at the time, and he introduced my dad and mom. And she lived in Wichita Falls. And the reason her family moved from Chicago down here is because her brother, Uncle Saul, was in World War I. He was my grandmother's pet. And since he settled here going to work for an uncle he had in Fort Worth, my grandmother picked up and told my grandfather we're all moving to Texas because Solly is there. And they did. And they moved here.
Okay. Where did your folks live when you came along? Where were they living? What neighborhood?
In Claremont and Hollywood Heights, or Hollywood Addition, I forgot what it was called, on Claremont Street, between Santa Fe and East Grand. We lived at 517 Claremont. I went to Mount Auburn for half a term and then to William Lipscomb Elementary School.
Now, was that at the time basically kind of a Jewish area?
No,
Not?
most of the Jewish area was in South Dallas, but my mom and dad found a lot out in this place. He liked the country, and he thought it was going to remain that way. Of course, it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But, and so they found a house there that they liked. Well, actually, they didn't find it. They found a lot. And they bought the lot and built their house. It was a 2-bedroom house with a porch. Probably 1,000 square feet at the time. And so my brother and I grew up there. And I ended up going after the first semester. Mother didn't like Mount Auburn for some reason, and that was our school district. But we were on the border of William Lipscomb School, and in all her infinite wisdom, she managed to talk someone into letting us go to Lipscomb School, which we did. And then we went from there to Long and Woodrow. graduated Woodrow.
What were some of your activities when you were young? What are some of the things you were interested in?
I was a tomboy. I climbed trees to get mistletoe on New Year's Eve and to pick pecans. I played baseball on Claremont Street with all the other boys and girls that played baseball. I roller skated. I got my first bike when I was 10 years old, and I guess it's the one gift I remember all my life because it was Depression years and it was difficult. And we had neighbors next door who were Christian, Aunt Kay and Uncle Bob, and we became real close with them. So they would invite us over when they would have Christmas Eve and had gifts for all of us then too. We had Hanukkah and Christmas. And when I was 10 years old that Christmas, and it was icy and cold outside, and I called him Uncle Bob. But he said, "Cecile, let's go out and see if it's snowing yet." And we went out. There was a big ribbon on a bicycle for me.
Aww.
And I had my first bicycle.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So,
that's beautiful.
It was good memories, and they were wonderful people. And in fact, my mom and Aunt Kay, I call her Aunt Kay, my dad and Uncle Bob put a wire, like a walkie-talkie, from one kitchen to the other so they could talk to each other all the time. So we grew up with good neighbors.
Yeah.
The Swifts, I don't know whether you knew Marion and Marvin Swift. Okay. They lived on the other end of the street, the twins. They were my age. So I grew up with them.
What about religious upbringing? How is your household as far as religion is concerned?
Oh yeah, my dad was Orthodox. Mama fit right in. In fact, I remember when she had to get up at one of the sisterhood luncheons, a donor luncheon, and she didn't like talking in front of people. And Ann and Aunt Gladys were the better ones for that kind of leadership. Mama ran the kitchen, raised money for the donor luncheons from her menus and the food and her crew, Sarah Goodman and Miss Schnitzer and all of them that worked with her, Nan Esther. And I remember when they made her get up in front of the mic one day at one of the donor luncheons because of what she had done. And she says, "I can just say one thing. I married Sam February 15th, 1925. February 16th, I was working in the shul already."
What synagogue did you belong to?
Sheriff Israel.
It was and so that was the old Sheriff Israel in South Dallas?
Yeah, and we've continued it on. Daddy became a member there in 1917. He came to this country in 1912, so he was about 21 or 22 years old. And at one time, they had a big frame with all the membership in the years they became members, but as it grew, that all got lost. But I can remember, and I was so happy, he was the first one to become an actual member of the synagogue from the Goldman family.
Wonderful.
And he joined it in 1917.
Did they belong to any other organizations that you can remember?
Well, Mama worked with Hadassah and the Sisterhood, and I don't know, so many. She has a couple of pins from Hadassah too. But, and Dad was just mostly with the synagogue. Whatever went on in the synagogue is where he was, and baking.
Right, that's
when the bakers worked all night. The baking was done at night.
Tough job.
He, Uncle Hyman Goldman, and Uncle Jake were the actual bakers. Uncle Abe was a salesman, a phenomenal salesman. You couldn't meet him without immediately liking him. And he brought the accounts in. Uncle Hyman Nathanson, that's Adeline's dad. Aunt Bertha was his wife. That's my dad's sister. He helped with the business end of it. He was a very good businessman, very sweet and human. And Uncle Jake was in the Old Cliff Bakery. The first bakery was on Corinth Street in South Dallas. And then they opened on 9th and Jefferson in Oak Cliff and had the Oak Cliff Bakery.
How long did that go? Was that there?
Oh, it went for many, many years, and I can't remember when it finally ended. Wonder Bread came in, some of the big national chains, and they were squeezed really. But they contributed a lot to the city, not just from their bakery, but from their activities.
Right.
Uncle Jake um, did a lot with the community, being he was in Oak Cliff too. He was the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce, and he did a lot of things that way. When I was little, Daddy would take me fishing at White Rock, and my brother and I. And I think somewhere in my garage I still have the old minnow bucket. We would walk down there. Dad came down in 1940. Actually, in 1932, when my brother was born, he had an acute attack of, I forgot what kind of arthritis, that was affecting him all over his body. And Aunt Bertha and Uncle Hyman drove him to Hot Springs to get treatments. And Mother was still in the hospital with my brother had been born. Those days they kept you 2 weeks when you had a baby, or longer. And they laid him out comfortably and took him to Hot Springs, Arkansas, for treatments. And they worked. Daddy worked for years after that until 1940, when he couldn't work anymore and he couldn't even drive. He was 45 then. Rheumatoid arthritis. Actually he had the other kind of arthritis, and in 46 he had an attack of rheumatoid arthritis. And they thought at first it might have been polio, but it wasn't. And but he always smiled, never complained, and kept going. They wouldn't let him drive anymore, which was sad. But the Goldman family were one unit. The brothers and sisters were always there for each other. And I think even the younger generation, we still are.
How have you managed to keep in touch with everybody? What do you do?
Well, at least once a year now. We were having once a month the cousins' luncheons. And Ida Ann was getting everyone together. She was the baby, and she would get us all together. And recently Sonny had Manuel and so forth, so we haven't had it recently, but we still get together. And just got together for lunch not so long ago. And keep up with each other. We really do. Ida Ann's carried that on as the young one with dates and for everybody.
You're lucky. Not everybody has family nearby. I think it's wonderful. That's terrific.
We've been very fortunate that way, because a lot of us didn't even know our grandmother Goldman, because she passed away in the flu epidemic in the early 20s. But we all knew Zadie, and he was so sweet. And the story was that all of them that were my age, babes in arms, were afraid of him because he had a beard. And he was so excited when I came over, because I was the only one that liked it. I liked to stroke his beard. So I have a picture of him holding me, my mother's father holding me, my daddy holding me, all about the same age as a little girl. And I cherish those. I have them on my wall here.
Did he ever come here? He never came here to
Zadie
live.
was here.
He was here.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He came over with the younger children, with Uncle Abe and Uncle Max. The two girls were already over here keeping house for the older brothers. And so he and my bubby came over together with the younger children. And Uncle Julius, who got away from the Russians. Or the Tsar of Russia, whatever it was. Daddy loved to tell us stories of it. He never said anything bad other than they had to leave because of the Tsar of Russia. He loved the farm they lived on. He loved fishing in the stream. He would tell me stories of during the winter time, Bubby needed food, and the stream, they'd catch fish. The stream would freeze over. He said, and the water was so clear and beautiful. He said that you could see the fish swimming down the stream. He said, so we would see it ahead of time and know which route they were taking. It was a narrow stream. And we'd go and we'd knock a hole in it, and we'd go in and take the fish out and take it to Bubby to cook. Now, I don't think he made the story up. He was so excited about it.
You said that some of your family actually tried to retrace the steps and find the town where they were. What happened with that?
Larry Goldman. I don't know. You need to talk to Larry.
Okay.
he did some research on it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think Larry took a trip on one of the trips over to Poland or Russia one day and tried to find, they didn't have the old maps with Zabeline on it. It's a tiny little farm town, and that's all we know is Zabeline. But our grandfather also worked as an accountant doing books for the little county there. I know that. Daddy told me that. Because they all farmed and that didn't make enough money, and he would go into the little town and do bookkeeping for them.
Now tell us how you met your husband. We haven't talked about that part yet.
Okay. I was girlfriends with a bunch of girls here, including his sister. And she called one afternoon, or one day, and she said, some of the girls are coming over, and I want you and Sissy. Sissy was a Gottlieb, and Sissy and I lived, Sissy Tieber, and she was a Gottlieb, and we lived in East Dallas, and everybody else had moved in other areas. And so I went and asked Dad, and he said, no, he says, because you and Sissy coming home, it'll be turning dark. I don't want you going through town and transferring in the dark. I was 15 years old. And so I called her back and told her that I would love to come. It was like a little hen party at our house. But my dad's worried about us coming home and turning dark before we come home. She said, oh, well, don't worry about that. My brother drives, and he can give you a ride home. He'll give you and Sissy a ride home. So he was close friends with David Giller. Do you know any of the Gillers?
I do.
Okay, well, David and he were best friends. And so he was with David, and they gave us rides home. Sissy lived off on Skillman, off of Gaston, and I lived on Gaston. And they gave us rides home, and a couple of days later he called to ask me out to go to a movie. And to Sammy's, everyone, that was the place all the kids went after a movie to go eat something, because we all had to be home by midnight, you know. And so I went to ask my dad, and he said, well, who is it? I says, well, you know Dolores Rosenzweig? I said, she's been over here for slumber parties and things. And her parents live on Neola Drive, and this is her brother. And I went on the whole deal, and he says, well, that's fine, but you need to be in at midnight. I said, I know. So
the carriage turns into a pumpkin, you know.
Yeah. So we went to a picture show into Sammy's. That was the place everybody went after a picture show. And came home, and we took me to the door. Mom and Dad invited him in. They always had, my dad was a baker. My mother became a great baker. They always had cake and coffee and sweets, and they invited him in. And then he called later on. We went on deck the next weekend. I forgot which night was his bowling night. He went bowling either Friday or Saturday, and we went out the other night. So we dated for about 5 months. So he turned 18 and went in the service. I mean, it's all good memories, though. You know, we sweated out. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and so did George Goldman. And George was in the 99th, which got hit hard. He was taken prisoner. Al David, my husband, was in the 78th. And then I had a cousin from Chicago from my mother's side that was in the 84th, and all three were there at the same time. But my cousin from Chicago, I forgot what division he was in, where he had access to a typewriter and mail, and he could write me uncensored letters, and that's how I knew that. He says he's worried about George. He wasn't related to him, but he used to come visit all the time. He was on mother's side, George was on daddy's, and they became friends. And he says, he said that his division was on one flank, and my husband was on the other flank, but George is in the 99th in the center. And so, all they had said missing in action when Aunt Ann and Uncle Abe got the telegram. But he was taken prisoner. But he was in an SS camp. And he really went through it. He weighed 90 pounds when they brought him home. When his own division relieved that prison camp. It was an SS. And those SS guards didn't live to tell the tale. And I know all the rest were too, but George was such a gentle person. But they starved them, absolutely starved them. And he was in a hospital for a long, long time after that. And then they flew him back to the hospital here, which was in McKinney at the time, the Veterans Hospital. And he was there for a while.
How did your husband come back? Well, he wasn't your husband yet, but what shape was he in when he came back?
He had frozen feet, and they treated it there. But when he was ready for discharge, he didn't write it down because he knew they would keep him in the service longer and he wanted to get home. But he had effects from his frozen feet the rest of his life, where he didn't have feeling. In the middle of the hot summer, his feet were cold, but fortunately he came out okay, otherwise.
And did he ask you to marry him soon after that, or did you wait?
He came home in April. He went in service in March of 44. He came home in April of 46. And we started dating once a week. And then we got engaged in July. And we married a year and a half later. We needed both to be working. I quit school because in those days, I quit right before he came home. I wanted to be a school teacher. And the rules in Texas for school teachers were that if you were married, a woman couldn't teach because they needed jobs for the men. So I figured, well, that's all I wanted to be, so there's no use me keep going and get a degree in teaching when I'm not going to be able to because the men are coming home from service. So I quit and I went and learned shorthand and so forth, and I became secretary to the credit manager at American Standard office here. And I worked there. And then Al David's dad had a small custom jewelry store downtown, and Al David worked there. And his dad told him it would be his store when he came home. Well, as it happened, he did for a while, but the rent went up so high they couldn't make money anymore. And he said, I need to do something. What are we going to do? And I said, you love the outdoors, you love fishing, you love going out. I says, why don't we go in the building business? He said, that sounds good to me. And he knew nothing about it, but we found a gentleman, H.C. Northcutt, and we had gone to look at this house that he was at. He was the framer on it. And we didn't buy it, but we looked at it in East Dallas on Shook Street. It was near Shook Street. And he decided he wanted to be a builder. And it came to him naturally. And so the first house we built was actually on Shook Street. Yeah. We bought a lot there, and his dad helped us and bought it for us because Al David wanted to build. The lot was $5,000. We paid him back very quickly for it. Mm-hmm. And we sold the house on completion for $18,500. And then we went on to build. But in the meantime, when we came back from our honeymoon, we were going into an apartment, and you had to have your name on a list to get apartments afterward because they were scarce. Dallas was not an apartment living city anyway. It was still the small town where everybody had a little home or something. And so we had our name on the list. It was on University, and we were going to take an apartment. But Al David's mother and my mother vied for each one living closer to them. My mother lived on Gas, and she lived there. They were close friends. They played canasta together. But so we came home and from the honeymoon, and Dad said, come with me. And he had already bought us a house on Watika. It was 1,000 feet. It was very close to my in-laws.
Mm-hmm.
We could almost ride our bikes over there. And now David and I both at the same time yelled, "Dad, we're going to pay you back every penny. We don't want it as a gift. We want to earn what we have." We both felt the same way, and we did.
Mm-hmm. That was a beautiful gesture, though.
We were very independent.
Yeah, that was a nice gesture.
And
so how did your family grow at that point? Your own immediate family?
Well, they were both born while we lived on Watika.
Did you have it? What children did you have?
Howard was born in 1949, Sammy in 1952, and we had a 2-bedroom house. So when Sammy was coming along, we got some carpenters and added on to the back another bedroom. And we stayed there for a while, and then as they got closer to them going to school, we found out that Arthur Kramer's school was a brand new school that was going to open about the time that Howard was of school age. Before that, they went to a little preschool. I can't remember her name now. Howard knows it. Anyway, that a lot of the kids went to, that we took them to. So we sold our house, moved in with my parents. Actually, with my mother. My dad passed away in 51. And moved in with Mom on Gaston for a year to save up. And then we found this house when Howard was almost school age, and we moved in here. We've been here ever since. So
this is a great area.
It was in the country then. Royal Lane dead ended 3 houses down, and Kramer School had just been built. So we got Howard into a brand new elementary school, and that was great. And it was full of young couples with children.
Right.
And it was great to be in this neighborhood. And then it grew. You know, you never think something was growing. The city grew. But
I'm sure Dallas has changed a lot since the early days.
It has.
Well, how would you say, what are some of the things you see, the major changes you see?
In Dallas?
Here.
It became a metropolitan city. I liked it when it was smaller. It was like 200,000 population, you know, during World War II. And which I thought was very large, really. And I liked it that way because we could ride our bicycle to the parks, and we could do things that you would worry about now. Letting your child go by themselves when they're 9 or 10 years old on a bicycle somewhere, which is sad that things have come to that. But in fact, Howard would they called it Caruth Hills, where Royal Lane dead ended. The Caruth family owned all that land. They owned all this at one time.
Oh.
They own land all the way out, I think it's to Forest Lane, and all the way into the city. The Will Curtis' grandfather or great-grandfather, it goes back to the 1800s. That was all ranch and farmland, and they had cattle and things. And he gradually sold it all off. This was Caruth land at one time too. And so Howard would take his little BB gun and go down with all the kids in the neighborhood, called it Caruth Hills, you know. They go shooting at the rocks and do things that they probably shouldn't have done. And then they cut through Bodecker into St. Michael's for a little bit. And one day I get a knock on my door, and we were already building houses. And one of the Ebby Halliday's agents that we knew came to the door. I said, "Come on in," and we knew her well. And she said, "I've got a young boy out here on a bicycle." Well, that wasn't the first time, because there's another story about Howard. Anyway, and Howard was white as a sheet. He says, "His BB just hit my window. His pellet gun." I said, "Howard, Mom, I was just shooting at the rocks and stones down at Caruth." And I said, "You're not going to do that anymore. You could have hurt this lady." I said, "And she's a friend of ours, you know." And he went in the house, and Al David sat down and had a long talk with him. Al David would never lift a hand to them if he could help it. I think one time he hit Howard on his rear, and then my husband suffered from then on himself. And he one time for Sammy, because he drove up the driveway, and Sammy was my younger one. And apparently I just told Sammy what to do or what not to do. I was on the front porch, and Sammy screamed back at me as his dad was driving up the driveway. And Al David brought him in the house, and he took his belt off. And I said, "Don't do that, Al David." And he didn't hit him out of reprimanding him. He hit him because he was upset with him for screaming at me. And my husband remembered that the rest of his life. He went back in there, he apologized to him. He says, "Your dad didn't do that out of discipline, I did it out of temper. I'm so sorry I did that to you." And good, Sammy was heavy and fat, so he could take it. But because he was such a gentleman, he just didn't want him screaming at his mother. I said, "Don't worry about that." I said, "I scream at him too, you know." Can I say?
Can you think of anybody throughout your life here that has been a role model to you?
Oh, almost everybody in my family. I tried to remember all the good about all of them. My dad was a sweetheart. And Anna even told me one time, she was married to Uncle Abe, she says, "I want you to know that your father is the sweetest one of all the boys in the Goldman family, you know." I said, "No, they're all sweet to me, you know." And he was just a very, very sweet man. And I was just fortunate. I had good parents, a wonderful brother. He was my best friend.
Well, those
And
are good, those are good
aunts
things.
and uncles and cousins. And we have the most united family, in my opinion, that anybody could have. All the uncles and aunts and cousins are always, and what's left of us, still there for each other. And I just think that's so important. We're raised to all of us, to be family. My mother and dad married at Aunt Bertha and Uncle Hyman's apartment, and way back, and they used to talk about that. And Aunt Bertha had golden hands. She made the little dress my mother wore at her wedding. And so
You had a lot of good role models.
we had,
Wonderful.
yeah, we had good family. Aunt Rebecca and Uncle Ben, they had a small trucking business with 2 trucks to haul things for people and worked hard. But originally they lived in Ferris, Texas. And we loved it. Pick up from Sunday school, go down to Ferris to visit with Aunt Rebecca. That's Red Coleman's mother and dad in Ferris. And I remember all the adults had a bottle of beer and we had cold drinks, and they had corned beef sandwiches and all kinds of things, and it would be after Sunday school, so it was a fun afternoon. And then they ended up moving back here, and they lived across the street from Forest High. It's all good memories. I remember when Dad was sick and all, I wore Adeline's hand-me-downs. She had beautiful clothes, and at birthday gave everything to Mama that Adeline outgrew. And I think there were just 2 dresses that Mama bought at the balcony at Neiman Marcus. They were taffeta dresses. I'd wear one Sunday to Sunday school and one the next Sunday to Sunday school. And we just the whole Goldman family is a very giving family, and we shared everything. And we shared our love.
Yep. Can you think of, in closing, can you think of anything, looking back on everything, that you are really, really the most proud of? Can you give a good example?
I guess just one word would be family, all the way from my family I was born into to my husband and my children. I think the one word is family.
I think it's wonderful.
It totals everything. Because I think that's so important. I hope my grandchildren feel that way as their children get older. I don't know if they will because they're spread all over. Where in those days that I grew up, the families were all living in one city and became really close. I know my grandson that's married and his sister that's married, and Derek, his brother that's not married, that's Howard children. They remain close to each other. Courtney's in Houston and Sean's in San Antonio, and they still watch out for each other. They each have 2 children. And their younger brother's been transferred to Australia, Derek, and he definitely is family. He hasn't found anyone yet, but we miss him. When my husband was sick, he never left his side here. So we're blessed.
Yeah,
And
I'd say so.
and my brother's daughters are very close with me. My brother and sister-in-law are both gone too. But it seems like I have too much meanness in me. I don't think they don't want me to go yet. Haven't not ready for me.
Not ready for it. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and I really appreciate it.
When I start, I really talk a lot.
That's okay.
Because I love family history. That's my husband. That was my mother's favorite picture. She loved my husband. In fact, they thought alike. They talked a lot. If we were all together, I wouldn't open my mouth. They agreed on politics. They agreed on almost everything.
Yeah.
And she was a smart mother. And but that was him when he was a teenager. About the time I met him. That's my mother's favorite picture of him. And it's my 2 sons at their bar mitzvah. And so we're blessed. And Evan lives here. He's my baby grandson. He's so sweet. He's here all the time.
Yeah.
Calls grandma all the time. He's not married. But we were blessed. From past generations and future, we were blessed. So I'm thrilled. And I'm going to let you cut that off because
Okay,
I'll
that's all
start and I'll talk forever.
No, that's